This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's AIAA Los Angeles, Las Vegas section town hall meeting. We have a wonderful, very amazing artist today with us, very renowned women space artist. And it's going to be very exciting, lots of fun. So please enjoy. But before that, we have a very short clip from our executive director, Dan Dumbacher, a few words about AIAA. So just while we're waiting for more people to join us. So enjoy.
Hi, I'm Mr. Rester.
Hi, I'm Emma Chow, and welcome to AIAA. We're shaping the future of aerospace.
Hello, I'm Dan Dumbacher. Welcome to AIAA. We are the world's largest aerospace professional society, connecting 30,000 members around the globe. Our members are shaping the future of aerospace and driving global innovation.
Hello, my name is Maria Gonzalez.
I'm Andrea Atsko.
I'm Elaine Petro.
Hi, I'm Mr. Rester.
Hi, I'm Emma Chow, and welcome to AIAA. We're shaping the future of aerospace.
All right, so that's the short introduction. So now I'm going to turn this over to our wonderful leader in aerospace and also aerospace space art, Michelle Rausch. So Michelle, it's all yours.
Thank you, Ken. Hello, everybody, and my name's Michelle Rausch, and I will be your moderator today for the Women in Space Art Grand Opening Virtual Art Exhibition. This is a reception and grand opening of the very first virtual art gallery of all women artists. All the artists are exhibiting in this show are members of International Association of Astronomical Artists. This is truly an international show because we are streaming artists from across the United States, the United Kingdom, and Malaysia. There are a total of 13 artists in this show, and you will hear stories from several, hopefully we'll have about 8 artists and hearing their inspirational stories in creating their work. I would like also to thank AIAA Los Angeles and Las Vegas section, especially Ken Liu. We can do this without you, in hosting and creating this beautiful virtual art gallery and making it available to the public. We know that March is known for National Women's History Month. And Ken, did you know you just created a moment in history by offering the very first all women's virtual art show with the genre of space art. And thank you for giving us a voice.
Great pleasure, honor, anytime.
I also want to thank the guests for joining us today, and you will hear stories from these artists, and this will be a 2-hour session, and you will have an opportunity to offer a question during the chat, and I will be looking at the chat, and we'll also have a Q&A session at the end. So we have several artists here, and I'm going to go in alphabetical order. And this is an image of our 13 artists, and this is really beautiful, and I'm seeing that it will last until May 7. That's wonderful. So if we could walk to, there's Adriana Allen is not here today, but she has a piece of artwork in the show. And some of the artists, we're all very busy people. And this art piece is called The Light in the Dark. And that's beautiful. She's not streaming in, and I just wanted to give her the stage of her art, and it's beautiful. So the next one is Patty Avalon. So if you could unmute your mic, I'm going to introduce her with her bio. Patty Avalon has a Master of Fine Arts from Indiana University. She has created everything from commercial murals to illustrated children's books. She taught at the college level and worked for the National Gallery of Art. Since 2017, She has been painting nebulas, galaxy, planets, and deep space. New worlds have opened up to us on Earth thanks to telescopes, oh yeah, and space travel. These expanded views present new sources of light, distance, and subject matters that will become a new land spacescape. I love this. Patty has professional art studio gallery in Virginia where she shares her passion for painting space and also teaches painting classes. She sells her paintings and prints online and in the gallery. So if you could please welcome Patty. Looking forward.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Michelle. That was a lovely intro. And thank you, Ken, for putting all of this together, and anybody else that I don't want to forget anybody, and Aldo for sponsoring this. So it's a real honor to be with this group, and particularly with my membership to the IAAA. I'm a relatively new member. I came in about a year ago, or a little over a year ago, and meeting the artists and the people who are part of that group has opened up a whole new world for me as an artist. So I'll tell you a little bit about my interest in space art and how it developed. And I'm interested in everybody else's story as well. But I was thinking, where did it all start for me? And I realized that I grew up in the 80s. And at that time, Carl Sagan and Anne Druyan, his wife, had created the Cosmos television series on PBS. And in fact, it is one of the most watched series ever in the history of television. And back in the 80s, I went, wow, this is something that is speaking to humans. I mean, it was opening up a world that was a bit of a mystery for many of us, but the way Carl and Anne wrote the scripting and the introduction to space exploration, it had a real human element to it. And one of the things that struck me was that in 1980, when that series was created, that was the middle of the Cold War. And they were both very aware of the nuclear arms that were proliferating in the world at that time. And by looking at other planets like Venus and Mars and looking at their atmospheres, these two people brought up the point that should we ever have a nuclear winter, this is what might happen to our precious planet. And I thought, isn't that interesting that right now we are kind of thinking about those things again and the preciousness of life on this planet. And now with a lot more exploration, particularly headed towards Mars, it just makes it a lot more personal. So I think as a young woman, it was Cosmos that really got me interested in space. So if we come up a little bit more, quite a few years, like 5 years ago, I got interested in actually painting space subjects. Now, I've been an artist all of my life. I've painted everything from landscapes to murals to portraits to still lives. And it started with a gentleman who called me who owned a think tank up in Washington, D.C. And he called and he said, can you paint a picture of the Milky Way for me? I really need the Milky Way in my office. And I went, well, I've never done it before, but I'll give it a try. I'll do my best. And I did it and I loved it. And so I've done a lot of Milky Ways since then. And what I'm finding is that I don't want to duplicate the images that we're seeing coming from our explorations in space now. I mean, I think they're beautiful as they are. And so what I like to do is add a little bit of my own emotional signature and interpretation to the subject matter. And that was one thing that Carl Sagan also said, that we have an opportunity to combine dreams with facts now. And meaning that human beings are always dreaming about space. There's our roots, there's where we come from, it's where are we going to go in the future. And so for me now, the last 5 years, that has been the main focus of my artwork. And I'm looking forward to seeing what comes from the James Webb Telescope imagery. I think that's going to open up a whole new thing for us as well. But having painted landscapes from Earth scenes, I realized there's a big difference in painting spacescapes, and particularly because of the light. As a plein air painter or a painter here on Earth, there's atmospheric conditions that create a certain look about the light that we experience on the Earth. And one of the challenges for me has been how to paint the light in outer space, because all the factors are different. So that's kind of my fascination, and it's what I'm having a lot of fun with, also playing around with different technical things to finally get that way of interpreting that's very personal for me. So that's kind of it.
Patty, this is
Thank
awesome. Having that personal connection and trying to figure out how do you paint light, and and that's your artistic expressionism, and that is fantastic.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
pulling that forward. And we have people coming in, and we welcome them. And there will be questions that can be posted in the chat if you have any questions for Patty. And we do have a whole group of people coming in. I see that Marilyn joined us. Thank you so much for joining us. We could go to the next one. How about that? Let's go to Jennifer Ben. And let me introduce you to Jennifer. Jennifer, she is an artist painter. Her works examines technology and the effect of technology on the world through the research of drawing, painting, and visually and socially examining computers, rockets, space shuttles, remote control, and other sci-fi images and their space in this time. She seeks to comprehend them better and to represent them for the viewer in a revealed vision. It is through visual interpretation that Ben hopes to reawaken our senses and minds to notice how technology has changed and is changing the world. In Ben's view, chaos and order, creation and destruction and recreation are the connection between painting, art, and technology. Thank you. And Jennifer, take it away.
Hi there. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay? Thank you. I'm at work, so I'm using my phone. This piece is titled Vostok 6 Valentina Supernova, and it's an homage to one of the first woman who went into space, Valentina Tereshkova. I painted this painting about her. It's basically a diagram of her space capsule, return capsule, overlaid with some other images and colors that I use symbolically to, I hope, tell the story a little better. There's some Russian Cyrillic, if you pinch and look closely under the resting astronaut. And then, of course, it says the name of her ship, Vostok 6, at the bottom. And also her code name, which was Chaika, or Seagull, which lots of parts of the story that I hadn't heard as an American. I heard all about, I live in New Hampshire in the United States, and we hear all about Alan Shepard, which is a great story too. But I hadn't heard about Valentina Tereshkova. So this piece is sort of like my record of what I learned about her trip back in 1960, in the 1960s. She was very young, and there were actually 5 or 6 different Russian cosmonaut women training for the program. And she was selected mostly because of her parachute experience. That's what I have, a little symbolic parachute at the top. And that leads to an even more interesting cover-up. There are a lot of cover-ups in the early Russian stories that you have to dig to find. I mean, I'm sure everyone here is aware of a lot of those stories, but as an artist, I hadn't heard about them. And one of them that I found interesting was that there was a rule early on that the early astronauts and cosmonauts were supposed to land in their return capsule. I'm not sure why that rule was important, but the Russian scientists said, yeah, that's going to be hard and that's going to be dangerous. So they actually ejected the cosmonauts about 4 miles up in the air before they returned to Earth. And then they would parachute down and they would be collected and brought back to their spaceship as if they had landed in their capsule, which I thought was amusing to hear about the cover up, and also, it does actually sound safer. I'm not sure how hard the landing's going to be. And Valentina, again, was like 24, 25 years old when she did this. Her mother didn't even know she was going up, which I also thought was hilarious. They had to phone her and say, yeah, your daughter just came back from space. And they said, no, she's at parachute school. And again, lots of other things they covered up. The Russians covered up a lot of secrets for a long time, including one of my favorite ones is they forgot to put her return instructions into the computers. So she's up in the capsule. She realizes they've put the wrong directions in for her to actually come back to Earth. So luckily they were able to send them and she got back safely. But it's a fascinating story, lots of details to be known. And I'm just really interested in general about a lot of the unknown stories of women in the space program. So I have another piece about the Mercury 13, which I know is a term that came later. They weren't actually called that originally, but it's another fascinating story about American women training, or at least being tested, American, very accomplished pilots who were interested in being part of the American space program. At the same time that Valentina is in space for 3 days, they were being shut down by the American government and by other American male astronauts, saying, nope, it's a man's dominion and it's their choice. And of course, Valentina is in space for 3 days, longer than all the American astronauts combined at that time. So that's proving that your gender has nothing to do with the issue of being an astronaut or a cosmonaut. So that keeps me going in these positive stories. And of course, Wally Funk finally getting to space. She was one of the Mercury 13. And I was listening to the last speaker's question about how you got into space art. And for me, it was a lifelong love of sci-fi and, both Star Trek and Star Wars, love them both. And, seeing these images in books and television shows for a long time. But it wasn't until I went to graduate school. Before that, I'd done paintings about different topics, usually things that reflected something going on in my life, travels or other things I was interested in. But when I was in graduate school at Syracuse, one of the art history teachers said, I want you to write a paper on the most American artist you can think of. And I chose Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol, of course, being an immigrant, really fascinated with fame and being in the commercial fields, putting on a show. I thought that was very American. But what struck me was how some of his images were icons for not only his life, like the soup can, but icons for the time period. He chose images that were symbols of the 1960s and et cetera. So I looked at my own work and said, what would be an icon for me for right now? This was 1991 through 94. I was in graduate school. And I thought, okay, I'm going to choose the computer. Now, I'm actually communicating to you now on my phone, so obviously we've come a long way. But in 1992, when I first started painting technology, or 91 actually, not everybody had their own laptop or their own personal computer. Most of my faculty did not. My husband, at that time, boyfriend, did have one, and I made the switch from electric typewriter to Apple II. So I had one, but most of my friends didn't. And again, my point back then was this technology, this computer is what's going on right now. And as a person from Gen X, I can see what came before, during the change, and now it's ubiquitous and everywhere. Everyone, again, I'm communicating through the airwaves on my cell phone, which is pretty amazing. And this virtual exhibit also, pretty amazing technology. And it wasn't that long before my paintings of the insides of computers, microchips and disk drives and things, then made the jump to rockets and shuttles and things like that. So it's been a lifelong learning experience for me. It just keeps me fascinated all the time to to find out new stories about the space program and what's going on. I'm really excited to have another woman go back into space, but also finally get to the moon with the Artemis program and the Space Launch System, which would be fantastic. And I'm still working and learning about women in the space program and also just the space program in general. So thank you again for having me. I hope that wasn't too rambly. I'm caffeinated.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. Jennifer, you are a wonderful inspiration. And I really like when you talked about your symbolism with the parachute. And I really see the space industry having that joint collaboration between the two nations. And I am very grateful that we've had that strong standing, and I want it back. We all want it back. We need to press forward with humanity, and art helps. Art helps bring that forward. And of course, with Mercury 13, in honoring those women to risk their lives and reputation to do that, I value meeting Wally, and I'm very happy that she had gone into space. Very happy. Thank you so much. And next up, does anybody have any questions for Jennifer through the chat? If you have any, please provide them. That would be great. Thank you. And so next up, Marilyn Flynn. She is just north of me, about what, 4-hour drive, a short 4-hour drive. Thank you so much for dialing in. I was getting nervous. She is a professional space-based astronomical artist who merges her artistic talent with a lifelong passion for space exploration. Her art blends science facts with informed imagination and portrays her desire to explore other planets. Marilyn's works have been published and exhibited all over the world. She travels to amazing places seeking inspiration and reference material for her art. And her works are in acrylic, pencil, digital, and fiber media. Her digital art is painted brush stroke by brush stroke, like traditional media, except done on a tablet and pen, and not generated by software. She is a fellow and, mind you, founding member of this organization, International Association of Astronomical Artists. Please welcome Marilyn Flynn.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I'm the old timer here today. This painting is a scene. I do mostly all space landscapes now, and based on places that I've visited where I see analogs to the geology on other planets, whether it's an actual analog or just something that looks like the same situation. This painting is based on an area in Iceland called Thingvellir, where the North American and the Eurasian plates are separating. And here I've translated it to represent a fracture on Europa, where some cryovolcanoes are erupting. The coloration on this is the ice on Europa gets irradiated by sunlight and turns a kind of a brown color. So that's what you see on the top there. And this is in the southern hemisphere of Europa, so that's why Jupiter's red spot is at the top. We went to Iceland on an IAAA workshop back in the 80s, and it just kind of blew my mind with all the geology there. It was so weird, so otherworldly looking, yet we were still on Earth. So it provided a lot of analogs for me for paintings that I did since then. I actually went back there a few years later because it was just so beautiful. I had to spend more time there. I got my start. I grew up with the space age. I wanted to be an astronaut, And back then, there were no women astronauts. There were no women role models to even want to be an astronaut. And so I didn't get any encouragement for that desire to pursue aviation or space or anything like that. However, I was the kind of kid who was scribbling on walls with crayons and everything, and that got encouraged. So as I grew up into my art career, I ended up merging my love of space with my art talents. I started off going to science fiction conventions where I saw a lot of really bad drawings of Mr. Spock and things. And eventually I hooked up with some people who were doing space landscapes. I met Kim Poor, and I realized that people were doing this as a career, as a living. And so that was kind of a big shocker to me to finally hook up with people that had the same mindset I did. At that time, I'd been working professionally in theater, and I just kind of hit the brakes and said, no, this is my true love, is portraying scenes of other planets, letting people know these are places we can actually go and visit. It's not science fiction, it's real. And so I went back to college and brushed up on I'd been painting very large scenes for theater and everything. So I went back to learn how to paint traditional paintings, landscapes and stuff. And about that time, I hooked up with the beginnings of the IAAA when the first Death Valley workshop was put together. Or it wasn't Death Valley, it was actually Hawaii first, yeah. Again, another place that was just, again, blew my mind with beautiful scenery that I translated into a whole lot of space art paintings. And so I just kept going from there. I've been trying to stick to my conceit of not painting a landscape unless I've been to that location on Earth, so that I can put my own emotional impact into what I saw, my own translation of the landscape and the feeling that I had when I was there, seeing it with my own eyes. And then, of course, as Patty mentioned, you have to take into consideration when you're translating these things, the fact that these are much smaller bodies, the horizons are smaller, there's no atmosphere. And so there's all those considerations when you're doing a space landscape, that you can't just take an Earth landscape and reproduce it exactly. So that's about what I've got.
Marilyn, I tell you, you really do put the emotions into your art, because what you don't see when I am at University of Arizona and your artwork is exhibited there, they really enjoy the scientific facts that you pull forward and understanding what people can't see. Also, there are other IAAA artists as well in Tucson. However, you have that level of emotions and you blend that in to understand how it is on that surface, let's say Europa or somewhere else. And it takes a great deal of imagination, working and collaborating with other scientists and how they interpret what it is on other worlds, and gaining that enthusiasm and just keep growing and going. And I'm so glad that you also mentioned about role models. Role models is the key of getting more people, more girls into whatever fields. Role models, if we're not there, they can't see themselves there. And you had to push forward and take a jump, take a leap of faith to see, am I going to be welcomed? And yeah, the IAAA are a bunch of crazy fun people, and they eat orange food. So be prepared to eat only orange food available when you're at workshops. It's fun. And so I know the next one is Death Valley. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're trying to do something. I'm not sure that there's much planned for it yet. It's just kind of in the talking phase right now, but it again is a wonderful place with loads of Martian analogs, and I look forward to go back there and and get some more good reference materials. And yeah, you know, like what you said, there was no women role models for anything. When I met the group, the IAAA, that became the IAAA, everybody was very welcoming. And there was only me, Pam Lee, a couple of women, so it was mostly men. But I never felt in our group that that was any restraint about joining the group or being a professional space artist, which was a really great thing.
Amen. They're great, and I look forward. I know I'm leading the effort for the workshop, so mark that in your calendar. I'm not sure when. I gladly lead it, and we'll figure out when, because we are all hungry to get together.
Yes, very much so. Get back out, boots on the ground, feet in the dirt and all that, and get together with everybody too, just to feed off of everybody and get ideas and back with humanity again.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm a people person, and I realize I love people. So thank you so much. Is there any questions for, and if you could put in the chat, if there are any questions for Marilyn, please post that, and we're going to go forward. And who is up? Is it Robin Hart? That my alphabet soup. Robin, and Robin is here. So let me share with you Robin's bio, and she's a board of trustees. So this is really exciting for the IAAA. So she says, I have had a lifelong love of space and the space program, and has been using that to inspiration for over 40 years. I have created space art in many medias, but I am doing the majority of my space pieces today as art quilts. If you haven't seen her art quilts in person, it blows me away. I am currently working on a multi-year project to create a series of deep space object art quilts using images from NASA's Hubble telescope as the inspiration. I have been concentrating on portraying nebula and galaxies, and am also integrating my digital work into some of them. I have been in 2 national exhibitions at the Space Center Houston for NASA's 60th anniversary of space flight, and 2021 when it was at the National Museum of the United States Air Force. Please welcome Robin Hart.
Thank you. I'll give you a little bit of a background on this particular piece, which is a bubble nebula. It's my latest in this series, my 7th. I chose the bubble nebula as this subject, not only just because of its beauty, but because it's like a bubble of light against the darkness of space. And this truly was my pandemic quilt. The piece, and what I do is, especially with my newer ones, this is one of the newer part of my series where I'm actually painting digitally, Tradigital, which like Marilyn Flynn was mentioning, I use a graphics tablet, and I work in Adobe Photoshop, and this one was done at full size, which took forever to paint, months, and to do all the painting portion of it. And then when that's finished, then I have that output on a large format printer on cotton cloth. And then I put it together as a quilt and then start doing all of the work and I use a sewing machine, and it's called free motion quilting. And I use very, very detailed, I wouldn't even want to count how much thread went into this particular piece, but you can't see it so much on the wall here, but the separation of threading is like less than 1/8 of an inch apart. And that's all over the entire piece. And I probably used about 20 or 30 colors of thread in this piece. And so anyhow, but so that's where I'm doing more of my later, the last few pieces in my series. The first one were done more as a traditional type quilting where I was actually sewing pieces together. And I was doing kind of a grid system that was kind of demonstrating the pixelation of the data of the zeros and ones that come back to us from our Hubble telescope and other spacecraft that are out there taking digital images of the cosmos. And kind of give you a background, I've pretty much been an artist since I was about 3 years old, and my talent began to emerge, and my parents noticed it, and they, you know, fed my love of that with crayons and the kinds of things that young children use. And also at the same time, I'm definitely another child of the space age. My father was very interested in the whole space program, and would literally, in those days, there was no such thing as computers or DVRs. So our little black and white television at 2 in the morning, if that's when NASA was launching something from the Cape and we were living in Los Angeles, we got up at 2 in the morning and watched the rocket go up. And so in fact, one of my earliest memories is standing on the lawn when we lived in the East Coast and watching Sputnik go overhead, and all the neighbors were outside amazing at it. So as I grew up and when I got into college, I started, of course, I was an art major, but I was also very fascinated with astronomy and took astronomy classes, and suddenly the two things began to merge. And although I had done a lot of traditional art in all my classes, suddenly I had one teacher in a drawing class when I migrated over to USC, and she said, draw what you have a passion about, or paint, or whatever you want to express yourself. And suddenly I realized that was space, and it was like an explosion. I started doing space art in just about every medium that I could possibly work in: pencil, watercolor. It was my first introduction with nebulae. I was doing watercolors, you know, and of course before Hubble there was less sophisticated images that came back, but I was so blown away by that. And also extraterrestrial escapes as the probes were going to Jupiter, Mars and the moon and Jupiter, some of the early Voyager and things. I was inspired by that. And I did a lot of color pencil drawings of that. Eventually I migrated into gouache and acrylic, and I started doing sort of surrealistic type art. I did have a one-woman show at the Griffith Observatory when I was 23 years old in my senior year, and I was the first artist to exhibit there. And I had about, so that was kind of a neat thing, and they had a whole series of artists exhibiting in that space after me. And I did another one 2 years later, another all-women show called Planetfall, and it was all on the planetscapes and things that I had done in color pencil and pencil. Later on, like I said, I was very inspired by Ludic Pesek, who used to do a lot of National Geographic work. So then my work became very surrealistic. And I've migrated over the years. And of course, when digital became a reality, we had the computer software suddenly caught up with my ability to paint. I started working in Adobe Photoshop with graphics tablets, and I began to express myself that way. And then about 2011, a good friend of mine said, you need to be an art quilter. And I go, well, why? I've never done hardly any quilting. And she said, no, you're coming into this group, and it's a group of artist quilters, and you're going to do that. And I did. And all of a sudden my whole world just kind of came together. And I did my first piece as a surface of Jupiter with some of its moons, and won an award from it from my first time out with the group. We had different challenge competitions and over the years, and then I suddenly was off and running, and suddenly this, you know, and merging my ability to do space art with another medium, and also now with the digital medium, being able to paint as realistically and expressively on the computer, and then to have that output as whole cloth, and then to do have the tactile experience of putting all of the design with with thread is just an amazing thing to me. And so this is kind of, you know, where I am now, and it's, you know, been very, very successful for me than any other type of space art that I've ever done. So that's basically me.
Robin, you are amazing, and I just cannot believe all the things. You're drawing with passion, you're combining things, you have such a deep appreciation for astronomy, and then in fabric, it blew me away, because I understand fabric, that's not easy, and then making the fabric into a piece of artwork, it's not just anything you see. You see it from a distance, you're like, oh, painting, but it's a little wobbly. It's like, no, it's not. It's a little bit of 3D, but it's hanging on the wall. I saw that at the National Museum of the United States Air Force. And I'm like, oh my God. It got really close, and I saw, man, there's a lot of thread, and oh my gosh, it's a painting. And it's a painting because painting as in the sense that when you step away, it all, your eyes transition all that together into one. So there's a level of depth, abstraction. There is also accuracy, and it's just, I love it. It's an emotion for me. It's an emotional experience.
Thank you.
And I cannot imagine the noise that goes on with the. Are you using what type of sewing machine are you using?
I'm using a Bernina, a Bernina 180 that my friend, who was the art quilter who recently passed away, so I have the legacy of her equipment that she sold me, and it's a special machine that's made for doing very intricate quilting and doing free motion. Basically, it's not just like running thread through a regular sewing machine, because when you do that, like you're sewing a piece of clothes or something, the sewing machine goes in a straight line, and there's basically a stitch regulator that that is engaged when you're just doing regular sewing. When you're doing free motion quilting, which is what I'm doing, you have a special quilt foot, and basically there is no tracking from the machine. You're basically using the pressure of your hands, moving the fabric through the needle, and your foot with the pressure that your foot has. And it's become kind of a Zen thing for me to be able to do this and know exactly how to regulate my stitches. And it's very important when you compete your quilts in quilt shows, which I do, to try to keep them as regular as you can. And I do different stitch lengths depending on what I'm trying to do, which is something that artistic quilting, you're allowed that liberty that quilters who do traditional quilting, like you might have, for bed quilts, are different. But so that is what, and it's a little noisy with the machine, but it's not, it's not bad. But I find that when I'm doing this, especially with a big piece like this, because this one is 39 by 40, that your shoulders get very tired and my neck gets very tired. And my husband literally has to yell at me sometimes because I have to, I have to stop myself. So I try to do it in 2-hour sessions now when I'm working, to try to not have the physical consequences of doing this type of thing, which is, and the same thing like when you're painting at the computer or on your thing, too much of anything at too much time is not necessarily good for you. So I've learned to pace myself really well now.
So Robin, the visual that I have is this. You have a foot pedal, so that's like a race car. You have your Bernina, which is now your, I'm going to call it Machine Gun Kelly. And then you're combining art and astronomy all into one.
Yep.
You have a lot of superpowers.
Woohoo! I'll get a cape.
This is great. Wow, this is amazing. And we have a shout out from Janet. She is so happy to have been welcomed as one of your guests here, and really find this amazing. And if you haven't ever experienced face to face with Robin Hart's art, maybe there is one time you could do a swoop. I don't know if you're on Instagram or do TikTok. That would be amazing.
Oh,
You
to
know?
show it? I'll have to think about that. I've shied away from social media, but I think, you know, the way things are changing, I'm probably going to have to reevaluate that somewhere.
Want to see it. I think you would create a movement, and not only a movement, but you know, if you have to I don't know. When I think of something aggressive that way, you need the right music and the right tempo. You know.
Well, I do get inspired by space music, and so I have quite a collection of, you know, often when I'm working on either end, either on the computer end or when I'm working with my quilt machine, I like to be inspired. I like to be inspired by that. And in fact, we have a challenge, which is another Amanda Lee Folkenberg, who is another one of our female musical artists in IAAA, has done a challenge called the Moons Challenge, and I'm just starting that, and it's taking me time because I'm working on IO, and it's and I'm still on the computer part, so it's going to be a while before I get to my sewing machine.
Wow, I really thank you, Robin, and you're inspiring me. I mean, I've sewn. My mom's taught me how to sew, but I've never taken it, and of course it is the mechanism that helps you, but I'm thinking of, man, I can't use my hand like that, but I really love it. I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, so we have the next artist. She isn't here, but her name is Barbara King, and I would like to put a spotlight on her artwork. This is awesome. It is full of color and inspirational. It's African space artists as mission specialists in how do you pronounce it? Anybody? Situ 2021. Thank you. And it's beautiful. It has a very earth feeling. I live here among a lot of Native Americans, and we have a very deep respect with astronomers here at one of the observatories here at Kitt Peak. So thank you so much. And next up is, thank you, Linda. Linda, I'm so glad you're here. There is one of two people that make this international. Linda Landers. She is calling in or streaming in all the way from United Kingdom. Thank you. And then let me give you your bio real quick, and hopefully I'm not going to butcher any of these words. I'm going to try my best. Linda Landers says, I grew up in Hertfordshire, United Kingdom, and studied at Central State Martin School of Art in London. I have a master's degree from Kingston University. I am a fellow of the Royal Society of Painter, Printmakers, and show my work regularly. I became interested in space during the Apollo mission in the 1960s. When I was a child, I presented my school with a piece and my space theme art on the 50th anniversary of the first steps on the moon. They have displayed my art next to the press photographers of the Apollo 11 crew. Thank you so much. I hand it off to you, Linda.
Okay, well, I'm really glad I got here because someone invited me to an exhibition and it was awkward. I got back on time, so, and the exhibition, it looks fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Now, this piece is oil on canvas and it was done for a small, quite local exhibition based on Schrodinger's cat. But I thought I'd look more at black holes because part of those theories with quantum theory and everything goes into a black hole in the same way as it does to Schrodinger's cat. I'm not a mathematician. I was very good at mathematics at school, but I didn't take that route. So my mathematics is visual, is this visual stuff that you're looking at here without any mathematical formulas. So I'm going to read you a very short explanation of what my thinking was on this piece. On the left of the painting is what we currently know. The possibility that matter changes according to us looking at it, bombarding it with photons. We know that some energy of the black hole leaves as radiation, but what else happens? Leonard Susskind, in his theory of the holographic universe, suggests that when entering a black hole, the astronaut could be fried and that's the end of it, or his imprint or hologram could be left in planks on the outside of the black hole on the horizon, while the essential information, that's him, could enter the black hole unharmed, as suggested by quantum mechanics. The question is, in the first scenario, what happens to the information? I've painted the information as tiny squiggles. These suggest a type of energy we could simply call nothing at this point. This nothing could add to the ever-expanding universe. That's my theory without any mathematics to back it up. It suggested that at the singularity, time and space are altered within the black hole, as suggested by Stephen Hawking, that they either crisscross or are completely warped. I've kept this to the right side of the painting in the area beyond human perception and experience as we know it, in the area of the unknowable. So what I'm trying to suggest here is with the colours that are in the middle, they wouldn't actually be colours. This is an experience that would be completely inexplicable to us in terms of time and space, of how we experience it. So by that looking like a mishmash there, I'm trying to say that this is something beyond our understanding of this is a solid object and it exists in this time and space, something that perhaps is beyond our reckoning, really. So we don't know. There are lots of theories. Some say it ends at the event horizon and others say there is something beyond there. We don't know where the information, these squiggles, go, but I consider them to be part of what causes the universe to keep expanding. So yeah, this is a visual representation of a mathematical idea and physical idea, which is the only way I could really try to explain the theory of a black hole. So, yeah.
It is always artistic license to understand what is in the data or what folks talk about with a black hole. I don't think people really know what. Thank goodness we don't live one close, you know. But I can tell you that the artistic license to have people understand what the image is and what it portrays and what we think it is today. We know as time goes on, we learn more and more and more, and it gets scarier and scarier.
Who's trying to describe something that's not in our realm of time and space as we know it, in terms of a 2D representation of a painting, is a challenge in itself, as you can imagine. But I found ways of putting various limits. This red line means that though you go into the black hole, there is also a coming out, which is these parts coming out and becoming part of the ever-expanding universe that we're in. So I see black holes personally as possibly something that does take a tremendous amount of energy and information in, but also adds somehow to the expanding universe through certain types of, I won't call it energy, things that I've called nothing here, that we don't have a name for as yet, or a process that we don't have a name for as yet. So I've tried to explain that paradox in there, and I don't know if I succeeded, but the it was great fun trying to figure it out.
It is. It is something to study and look at and understand. The movement is very dynamic. It gives us pause. It's pretty scary. We're just glad that I'm just glad there's nothing close by. Since a lot of us had, or the speakers have talked about their youth when they started. When did you start as an artist?
Well, I've always been an artist, really. When I was at school, junior school, we had an incredible head teacher called Mr. Chant. That's a magical name anyway. And on a Friday, he used to take us for the painting class, and he used to say to paint straight from the brush, no sketching beforehand. And then at the end of every class, there was a show of hands, and everybody voted me all the time. So I always used to win the competition. So after winning the competition forever, he said that it's time that you step down and let somebody else win. And he also took us for choir some days. And there was one time we had a special choir event, and there was somebody sitting in the middle of the audience smiling at me, and I kept looking behind, and it was definitely me that he was smiling at, and I didn't know who it was. And that memory stuck with me, and I just couldn't figure out who this man could be. And I remembered that one of the teachers had been pointing me out to this person and saying how gifted I was, and that I was gifted in all areas. So, I was just sort of shy and getting on with things. And when I went to the school to present them with a piece of my work and said that, the school hall was floor to ceiling in massive photographs of the Apollo mission at the time. And so we had these giant astronauts, and that was what I saw every morning when I went to school. And I had no idea we were being visited by astronauts, but it was totally inspiring. The whole thing was going on, with the Apollo, and we saw that on a big television at school. And my brother was very into it as well. He was older than me. And so after all those years, I noticed that space was creeping into my art. And I thought, well, it's not surprising really, because of all this. I was surrounded by all this space Apollo stuff as a child. And my father was in, he worked on the Concorde, so he wasn't quite in that, but he was still involved in flight in some way. And then when I went to the school on the 50th anniversary of the steps on the moon, first steps on the moon, I took them a piece of artwork, an etching of somebody on a spacewalk with their pet rabbit also on the spacewalk with them in a little, spacesuit. And as I was leaving, they said, well, we were visited by an astronaut. And anyway, it turned out it was Buzz Aldrin. So my 50 years of trying to figure out who this man was, suddenly I just couldn't believe it. I just wanted to scream and run and tell everybody that it was Buzz Aldrin. I just couldn't believe it. You couldn't even make it up, And when they told me, I didn't ask them who it was. And I went home because we were planning to do the presentation of the artwork in the new term. I bought one of Buzz Aldrin's books over that Christmas holiday, a signed copy, and I still didn't know it was him. And I was doing a little wood engraving of Buzz Aldrin, believe it or not, coming in to the school, through the school, the trees, and I still didn't know that was Buzz Aldrin. And when I contacted them, I said to them, well, did you find out who it was that visited? And they said, oh, yes, it was Buzz Aldrin. And I was just in a state of good shock, if there's such a word. And I just thought, well, this is all, if I hadn't have made that step to actually go back to the school and give them an artwork, I never would have known that that was Buzz Aldrin that was there. So 50 years of doing a process of elimination of who it wasn't, sitting in the audience right in the middle, and then it turns out that that was the person.
Right.
So I mean, I was already on the trail, you know, of the art, the space creeping into my work, and I started to notice it was a little bit undeniable that this space influence was coming in. So I'm still doing my other art because I realize that I've got to keep that going, the non-space art, but I do put space into my art a little bit as well. And I actually had a film that was a poetry film that was shown at Saatchi & Saatchi Gum Factory many years ago. It wasn't a space film, but it was meant to be. But there was a really short deadline, and I had to get this short film ready in 3 days from start to finish, which I did. And it was meant to have spacesuits and everything in it, but it ended up not having them. But actually it was meant to be about how a person feels when they're away from home and they're in space. It ended up being shown there, and it ended up being shown at a few other festivals in Norway and a few places as well. And I subsequently did a film MA at Kingston. But the space thing was always there. It was there. The thing is, at that particular point, it was I didn't have the spacesuit ready to actually be able to make it into a spacesuited film. So it was there. It's always been there, bubbling under the surface, trying to come up. And yeah, it was quite amazing to find that it was Buzz Aldrin. And when I looked at the school head teacher with wide eyes, she said, "We've got all the paperwork and it's signed." So I've been asking her if I can have a copy. So far I haven't got a copy, but yeah, so it sort of feels as if I should be involved in space art, and I am. I'd like to do more. It's you know, incorporated into my main work, but I'd like to do more, and it's just finding the time to do everything to a certain degree. And you know, I think just forward is the only way to go with it, really. And I think this exhibition looks absolutely fantastic, the virtual exhibition. Stunning.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have someone that made a comment and said, Linda, your explanation of thinking for this painting was quite illuminating and fun to listen to.
Good.
Thanks.
And I hope it helps some mathematicians to actually get the formula and a further formula, and to actually figure out some of those things, because they are the ones that, and the physicists who can actually look at that then and go, yeah, actually that's what's going on, but this is how it works, you know. And this is what the nothing is. We just found out.
And that's what I really like about our organization, is that we create a lot from both spectrums of technical to fun, and then communicating of what it is, and creating a dialogue. And I love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much. Thank you. And what time is it in the UK right now?
It's 11 minutes past 7 in the evening.
Not bad. And I want to tell you who our next speaker is. Thank you so much. Now she's coming from all the way from Malaysia, and it is not early. It's really, really early in the morning, or really late at night.
Indeed.
Her name, I want to say her name is, I'm not going to say all the names, but Shahira, and she goes by Shahira Stargazer. I really love that. And I'm going to tell the folks about your bio. I think you need like a cape, because I really like that Stargazer, but it would give more of an emphasis of pioneering. So Shahira Stargazer, as she is popularly known, is an astronomical artist and a dark sky advocate in Malaysia. Shahira started to gain the attention of the international organization through her beautiful and accurate astronomy artwork, and was subsequently accepted as a member, of course, by AIAA, and that's our organization. Aside from her artistic prowess, Shahira is also an advocate for dark skies in Malaysia. She strives to spread awareness of astronomy and the importance of dark skies through her passion in astronomy and drawing. So I would think that you're up late at night, so I don't feel so guilty. So please welcome, please tell us about yourself and tell us about your painting.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to AIAA, Michelle and Ken, for this amazing opportunity for me to participate in an international virtual exhibition with the other amazingly experienced lady space artists. I'm truly humbled to have my art featured in the Women in Space exhibition. Thank you so much. And so glad to see all of you here live, though I'm streaming from Malaysia at 3:13 a.m. I'm sorry if I look slightly sleepy, or I look not interested. I'm not actually not interested. I'm just, it's just very early and I'm a morning person. Just imagine that. So I'm a relatively new member of IAAA. I joined just like Patty last year, in early last year, and currently the only representative from my country. I grew up in a rural part of Malaysia, specifically at the foothills of tropical rainforests, far away from the glow of city lights. My childhood filled with nights of starry, dark sky and watching fireflies. I fell in love with astronomy when I was 7 years old, as well as making arts, like all children would. Children love to make art, so I was that child. I spent my days cutting newspaper excerpts and waiting for monthly science magazine to arrive my village every month, so that I can gather information about astronomy, such as galaxies, nebulas, and about our solar system. So since I'm living in a rural area, it's so hard to get all those magazines, books. So I'm waiting for newspapers every day and look through every pages if there's any galaxy images featured in the newspaper. I also gathered my friends in the village and taught them about the wonders above. We don't have the opportunity to learn about astronomy formally, and we don't have the programs conducted by school because it is so deep. It's not so deep in the forest, but you can say that it is at a foothill. So the teachers there teach what is necessary, but not really much opportunity on learning about stars, about our universe. So I became the person who delivered that knowledge to my fellow friends. And that time I was 10 years old. But currently I'm living in Malaysia's second busiest city. So you can imagine the amount of light pollution affecting the night sky, filtering out the lights from the dimmer stars. And currently I'm feeling lost and out of touch from the starry night skies. I spent nights thinking about how when I'm at the village, I can go and stargazing, but now I can't, because if you can hear right now, there's a sound of a motorbike. Yeah, that's how close I am to the highway. So I don't have a quality night sleep. So I turned to arts in expressing my passion towards stargazing, towards astronomy, and bringing awareness about light pollution and dark sky. I still miss the nights of stargazing and watching fireflies, being curious child. But she's still here, in here with me, and I'm expressing that inner child within myself through visual arts and making space arts. Addressing astronomy and art extrinsically is a relatively new thing in Malaysia, actually. And it is something different. Being a space artist as a profession and career is something different. And I became the first Malaysian to actively involve in the world of space art, contributing to planetariums, observatories, space and astronomy clubs, light pollution and dark sky advocacy in this field. I'm currently combining arts, astronomy, light pollution and dark sky advocacies, as well as education in my journey as a space artist. I am also an educator, so that's where the education part counts. And all these without formal education in art, self-teaching myself for years, and high school astronomy classes. And about this painting, on 3rd January of 2021, Leonard Comet was discovered by Gregory Leonard at the Mount Lemmon Observatory, and it is dubbed as the brightest comet of 2021. At the end of last year, we were able to see Leonard Comet at its most glorious point. The ion tail of the comet appeared complex with knots and streamers and bluish-green glowing nucleus. That time I was at the local observatory with the other local astrophotographers and astronomers on December 24th, when the comet was still displaying its outbursts in this ion tail, which is absolutely breathtaking. All of the telescopes were pointing towards a visitor from the interstellar space. And as all eyes on the comet, I witnessed the astronomical passing of my lifetime. I went back home, spent the whole night creating the image of the art, creating this image in my head, and thinking how what kind of art I would produce out of the experience and emotions that night. So to commemorate their memories of a deep space visitor, Leonard Comet, to our solar system, I produced an art series entitled Memories of Leonard, using watercolor medium on paper. And this is one of the artwork, which is called All Eyes on You. I implemented Van Gogh art style into the art pieces, which can be recognized through the bold, dramatic brush strokes that express emotions and added feeling of movement in the seemingly static night sky. The colors chosen for the background sky emphasize that dark night sky is not entirely pitch black. This shows that in the darkness we can see more. And the main subject, which is the Leonard Comet itself, is visualized as a fiery streak of light crossing the night sky, which is an artistic expression of the real thing. As we have witnessed from many shots taken by the astrophotographers, the comet displayed spectacular outburst-induced ion tail structure, which, in my opinion, is best depicted incandescently in every art pieces. And one of it is this one. As the ultra-fast Leonard Comet began to disintegrate recently, and is currently missing its coma and nucleus, and this art illustrated the comet's blazing days across the terrestrial night sky and the deep emotions I experienced while observing the once-in-a-lifetime visitor.
Shahira, you are the Shahira Van Gogh of Malaysia. I am so excited to see what's in front of me. You're using the composition to communicate. A lot of people know Van Gogh. They look at it, they examine it, they want to draw more attention. What is your inspiration and all these things. Being a pioneer at the age of 10, oh, there's no pressure. There's no pressure. I love it. Being that role model, you will be able to inspire young girls your age in your country. I can't hear an accent. So English is my third language, but I forgot my other two well. But wow, I'm in awe. And I just love that you're an educator. You communicate about the dark skies. Yeah, living in a traffic area, I can imagine that you are hungry for stargazing, and you live through your art to see it. And I am in total awe. I don't know if I should say good morning or good night.
Morning, because I slept for 1 hour and now I'm awake. So good morning. Good morning, everyone.
You are a beautiful woman, and I'm so grateful that you bring forward the other side of our earth, and truly an international organization, and bringing us all together with the understanding of technical and art and communication. We love it. Thank you. And
Thank you, Michelle.
looking forward to seeing more.
Yes,
wow.
I'm planning to paint more space arts. So.
And the piece that is behind you, is that your artwork?
Yes, this one is my watercolor moon series. And there are 4 artworks as well, just like this one, Memories of Planet. So there are 4 artworks for this one as well, and 4 artworks for the moon series as well.
Wow, I love it. I look forward to seeing more. I'm in total awe. There's a lot of emotion and expressionism, and the choices of colors. That's what I see with all of us. We're just constantly challenging our eyes and putting forward of what to communicate with the public. This is awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. So the next person is me, and I'm going to keep it nice and short because I've been talking all the time and I don't want to get hoarse. Just real quick, my name is Michelle Rausch. I am an engineer, illustrator, and artist that tries to capture the emotions of people living and working in a thriving, rich aviation and aerospace world on Earth and beyond. I'm also an AIAA fellow and a artist member of IAAA, and combined together, I would say we're I's and A's times 2. So, and I try to strive to combine the technical with the arts, and also what I try to capture is more in combining the passion and the romance, and that's why I use metallic paint. You can see this piece. It is titled Golden Inspiration. Golden Inspiration, it was debuted at a red carpet event this past January in the Beverly Hilton, where I was able to meet the astronauts, and there are 3 of the 4 signatures. So the artwork depicts a moment of SpaceX Inspiration 4 capsule, and the nickname of the capsule is Resilience, and it splashed down safely to Earth at the Atlantic Ocean on the Florida coast. Now, during that time, and why that ocean does not look like the blue ocean, is because the angle of the sun made the ocean reflective. And it was really cool to use different pens and paint of metallic silver, and trying to get that reflective mirror. And of course, when I sealed it, it got dull. So that stinks because you're trying to keep the metal. So I had to use different paints and then seal it, and then it allowed, the acrylic paint was covered. So I used multi-medium, and I was able to figure out, and this is not easy, trying to figure out how to use watercolor without having a piece of glass in front of it, because when you have a piece of glass, you just see the glass and there's some reflection and maybe you see the art. So now I've figured out how to create watercolor, and we should have a workshop with watercolorists, and create it in a way so I can display it without a piece of glass. So this artwork was the inspiration of the billionaire. His name is Jared Isaacman. So Jared Isaacman, he did a fundraiser for St. Jude Hospital. And I'm like, that crazy guy. Not only does he have the money to go into space, but he wants to create a fundraiser to have a moment in time. So he used this platform, which is going into space with SpaceX. And he had Haley Arsenault and Chris Zembrowski and Dr. Sian Proctor. And I know Dr. Sian Proctor. And so Jared Isaacman wanted to have a moment in time, just like what we're doing right now, of having an all women's space art exhibition virtually. So he sealed a moment in time being the first all civilian space flight with 4 crew members that represent the pillars: leadership, hope, generosity, and prosperity. And he raised $210 million. Talk about crazy. I just love it. And the one of the astronauts, Haley, she's actually a bone cancer survivor from St. Jude's, and she has a prosthetic. Not only did she survive, she was now an astronaut to raise money for St. Jude, and she has a prosthetic. I'm like, and she was the youngest. There's too many firsts, way too many firsts. There was another astronaut from Blue Origin that was 23 years old, and at the time that Haley went up, that not really too far long ago, it's a long time ago, September 16, 2021. So she was 29 years old, and she remains still the youngest American who has orbited the Earth. So we love people to break those records. We want kids to be excited, and people who have done children's books and talking with kids and getting them excited about our world of understanding this space world or astronomy. We communicate through art and getting them excited, and a lot of people, a lot of kids, they want to go into space. So and before I go to the next art, I want to tell you that I consider myself a born artist. I say I'm a trained engineer, but I'm a born artist. So you will see in my engineering notebooks portraits of speakers because I got to remember them. So sometimes I'm embarrassed, so I have to put sticky notes over their faces because I have to talk to someone about my engineering notebook. I'm like, oh crap, that doesn't look like I'm paying attention. And I didn't when I was a kid. And I made sure that my son didn't know until I was in college, or he was in college. And he's like, yeah, the figures. You know, he knew better. He knew that mom was crazy and fun and a lot of passion. And the door is not locked, so who knows if he's going to come in. He's here for dinner or lunch. We're at lunch. So you can see this thing right here, which is a SpaceX. This is a costume artist in, her name is Melissa, and she lives in Phoenix. And we, as an AIAA Tucson section, we bought this as a STEM outreach. And you know, when kids see art and they see rockets and they see figures, you can get them really excited, or books or poetry or music, something that just indulges, brings them all together, thinks that we can move us to the next level. What we're trying to do is move us to the next level. Keep moving that dial and get always excited and keep growing. And that's just all I want to inspire the viewers and everybody who's online or streaming. So enough about me. Let me introduce the next person. And if we could go to Daniella Rose. And I don't think she could have made it, but I want to give her a moment and offer this beautiful piece of artwork, the STS-133 launch. And that is not fun to make. I made that, anybody who has made that launch pad, I made a launch pad and it was painful. I had to put a timer on just like 1 hour a day. Like Robin, you were saying about giving yourself time. I started not liking this launch pad, and I thought, this feels like homework. So I like the smoke. Put the smoke on top so you don't have to bury yourself with all that detail. I didn't want to get too expressionist in that, because people will like, well, these are rails and they have to be in place. I'm like, yeah. So I really love the color composition, the dynamics, the pull, the movement. So thank you, Daniella Rose. So the next one, she is traveling right now. She is one of our astronaut artists, and traveling, she's going across country. She's not in outer space, but we always think of her as she is our first artist in space that drew in space, not just first artist. She actually drew in space. And so more power, girlfriend, to make this happen. And let's get more artists in space to draw. I don't know what watercolor happens, but if it's in a pen and it's, you're going to press down, it's going to look a little bit easier, because we know that if you have those little things, people, they don't want it in the wrong place. So I love that Nicole Stott, she offered us the wave. This is the wave, and it's wonderful. And she creates this beautiful dynamic movement. And I've seen her art. She has a really 3D effect on her artwork. This is I wanted her to talk about it. I'm wondering if she created this in space. So because it's a sketch, and it probably was quite difficult. I was wondering if you're on a plane like in the Vomit Comet and you're trying to make a drawing and you're trying to, everything is moving the wrong direction, because for every action, there's an equal opposite reaction, right? So if one moves one way, that you're trying to fight. So I'm glad I don't have that problem, but we will probably want to ask her more about this. We will know soon from her, but that's personally. This is I just love that she created this, created artwork in space, and I created a portrait of Nicole Stott, and it's called Astro Nicole on Mars, and she's painting her artwork on Mars. So thank you, Nicole. So the next person, if I could also introduce, this would be Priscilla Thomas. So she created this also dynamic piece of, as if, it's very dangerous to be underneath the rocket motors, but this is how the fumes and everything and all that fire would be coming at you. Defiance, exactly. This is a very dynamic piece and very dangerous, and only artistic license to think of that vantage point of how it would feel of something, of course, blowing at you, and God forbid, but that's why we're artists. We can create a new vantage point to say, this is where you're at, and this is how it looks. And there's no camera that could beat in this setting, and the fire and the movement in this. And I really thank Priscilla Thomas for offering this. And I would think the piece behind her of Mars, and I really like that combination of dark and colors, and it really illuminates her face with her portrait. That is awesome. It reminds me of all the astronauts, the Apollo astronauts, when they had the big moon next to them. It's like, well, we have Priscilla Thomas, and we have her in front of Mars. So she is now on Mars. This is great. And then after that, I think, this could be our final artist. Last but not least, Lucy West. Lucy lives in the Northwest, and she is in Idaho. And let me tell you a little bit about Lucy West in her bio before she speaks. So West creates fine art infused with the elegant science that makes up the phenomenal mechanics of our world and universe. Her wish is to inspire others to look up at the night sky or look deeper into the inner workings of nature, and through the creative process, explore how and why With over 40 years as a professional artist, Lucy's works have been exhibited in notable venues such as NASA's LCC and Kennedy Space Center, U.S. House of Representatives, Biosphere 2 in Oracle, Arizona, Lowell Observatory, gallery collections worldwide. Her space and science compositions are popular in aerospace and science communities and collected by astronauts, astronomers, and scientists. She's a member of the IAA. Please welcome Lucy West. You're on.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Michelle, Ken, AIAA. Thank you so much for making this happen. After listening to all these wonderful artists' stories and explanations, I'm just in awe and humbled to be present in this group of women. And it's really interesting because I've been a self-taught artist my whole life. The only art classes I ever took were in high school. I've never gone after workshops or, art classes or anything like that. And this is the first all-female exhibit I've been involved in. And I'm so proud. It's space. We're talking space. We're promoting space and all that it benefits our life here on our earth, what that gives back to us by looking out and exploring, and how that comes back to us in really beneficial ways. And that's kind of what this piece that I submitted is kind of talking about that. But I have a great interest in our ancient ancestors, thinking of them roaming this world without light pollution, without all the, futuristic complications that we experience. And interacting with their world and the night sky and wondering what's going on out there. They don't have the knowledge that we have now, so it's these ancient people that started these quests just by looking up and creating stories that, the constellations have folklore around and stuff like that and get passed down generation to generation. I chose the pillars of creation to kind of communicate all this because it is these amazing, phenomenal objects out in space, these hot gases, these nebulas that become these star nurseries. And once a star is created, then you have the potential for solar system. And then from that, you have the potential for life. That's what happened here in our own solar system. And so it was because of these hot gases out there and all these dynamics coming together to create this perfect scenario for us to have this world, this phenomenal world that we live in that supports life, And so all my years of enjoying astronomy and, I do a lot of personal research on space and all the objects that I'm interested in and I just saturate my life with it. And I've noticed over the years what's happened, my focus has been out there for so long. And as I get older, it's coming back to this world. And I'm just so in awe of how beautiful our planet is and all that it gives us. There's no other planet like it that we know so far. And hopefully in my lifetime, our lifetime, we'll get the opportunity to see an exoplanet out there that is very much like our planet. I sure hope so. But yeah, this one painting is just sort of like collects all my different interests and puts it into one storyline. And so we're in the ancient past, and our species is walking forward into the future to go, generation by generation, find more and more information about our place in the universe. Yeah, so that's kind of my story. My past, my career, art is all I've ever done. I actually had a business when I was 15 years old doing commissions, and it just sort of bloomed from there. And so that's why I was going to go to art school and pursue, traditional path toward becoming a professional artist, but it just seemed to kind of map itself out all on its own. And so by the time I was 18 and I graduated, and I was living in Kentucky at this time, and I was free to go make my own life. So I chose to go to Daytona Beach, which was really close to Kennedy Space Center. And that's where I got introduced to space exploration and astronomy. And that's really when it all took off, is when I was in my late 20s. And, it started to show up in my artwork. And then some people that worked at Kennedy Space Center heard about me and came looking for me and started commissioning fine art pieces for their dignitaries. And that's kind of how I got into this vein of space art and making it a career path. I do all other kinds of art, always have, because you have to if you're going to survive. So, murals, logos, you name it, album covers, just other fine art subjects that don't relate to space, but I always sneak a little bit of astronomy in my pieces, just to, because it's in me, and that's what comes out. But yeah, that's sort of my background and why I chose this piece to submit for this exhibit.
Wow. I tell you, looking at your art, now I also have seen your art for quite some time. You're one of the most grounded folks that I know. And seeing how you interpret DNA, seeing how you interpret the cosmos, seeing how you integrate the past and the future, it generates an emotion. It's like, where am I going? What is the message? And the message is, it's like, yeah, this it's artistic license that we can do that. We can put something. It's not a photograph, but a lot of people they need to understand. It's like, no, let's bring it to earth. And I love it.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you.
It's, yeah, this isn't easy to integrate this. And every single one of you, I absolutely am in awe. One thing was, collecting all the emails and collecting all the images, and reading the bios, but the interpersonal experience, to hearing you guys, to have it voiced, is very different than just, it's a different experience, of course, when you read things in a book, but this is something that we offer, and I'm very grateful that it is recorded, and we're offering something for all of us to see. And I never like the way I speak. No. So I'm gonna see it maybe once. We are now the Cosmic Sisters, right? And we couldn't do it without our cosmic brothers, because combined together, we can do things together. We can't just stand alone, we stand together. And together we strive, and they want us as strong as them. And that's why our cosmic brothers support us, embrace them, teach them, tell them our stories. And they're like, man, I did not know. Sometimes just a pause, or we would say, man, I have that same problem. But we never think that if they're the opposite, it's like, no, we're all the same. We're just dealing with problems differently. Sometimes there's a collection, sometimes we're all different. Like an interpretation of, if we all had an assignment and we would say, okay, draw the moon, a lot of us would maybe draw something. Maybe it's the moon. Maybe what is our interpretation of the moon? So a lot of things are beautiful in the artistic level because we have not journeyed there yet. And all of us are different. So collectively, we're under the same umbrella of space genre. And we love that people don't know. So we learn about what's going on in science, and we create. We keep creating. I can't stop creating. So I am so grateful. So I would like to open this up to our guests and open the mics, I believe, or I don't know how we're going to do it. Ken, so if someone could maybe raise their hand. I'm not familiar with the Zoom session. I'm so glad, Ken, you're the driver, and I talk with my hands. I can't use the mouse. So I will be muted. So
Looks
Ken,
Aldo have something to say.
Hello, hello. Can you guys hear me?
yes.
Yeah.
I wasn't
Hello,
sure if I was
Aldo.
unmuted.
Yeah.
Wow, what a fantastic program. I'm so proud of all you guys. The Cosmic Sisters, yeah.
Woohoo!
Just a great program. I just wanted to thank Michelle for all your hard work and leadership. I know it's not easy to herd the cats, be they male or female. Cat herding is not easy. So good for you. And thanks to Ken. We really appreciate your endless and steadfast support of the IAAA. And on this program and other programs you've hosted with us, and we certainly hope to continue that. So very inspiring. Wow, just to hear all of your individual stories, and it's great how everyone has come into space art from a different direction, but we're all here as part of the tribe. So it's very inspiring. Well done, everyone.
Thank you. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Ken, do you think anybody from the attendees would like to voice and offer something? So I
think
would like to.
Paula also have her mic unmuted.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, so I've been working on space, in space. Well, I haven't been in space, but I like to dream about it. I don't know, decades, maybe 40 years now. And so this really, I was just absorbing this. I think this is fabulous. And I took some notes, but of course I can't really, a lot of the things you captured, so many aspects of human experience of space, not necessarily being in space, but of course that's involved, but just our connection with space. One of the things I wrote down in the notes was the early painters on Earth, even starting with the cavemen, observing Earth, whatever they found. And how humans have related to our environment. Oh, I'm remembering one of the things I wanted to mention. I don't know if I can find it. And so, now we're going into space, and I hope I'm writing a book about Mars right now. And I like to think that when humans get on Mars, they will have a whole appreciation for it, and perhaps a new perspective of Earth, and that this should be captured in an artistic way, because it's different than scientific. It's different than the facts. It's more about how these things affect us as human beings, whether it's the scenery or the experience, or stepping on the moon was such a big thing for the world. I remember that day vividly. Newspapers from around the world. There was an exhibit of the newspaper coverage around the world. I remember I saw this in Washington, D.C. when we first circled the Earth and saw the moon for the first time. So I just see this as the next step for us as humans. And looking at the artwork and the imagination and how we as humans are relating to it, it's just magical. And all of you artists are incredible, capturing both the facts and the imagination.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That is so beautiful. And I think Earthrise was Apollo 8 when it happened. I think that's when the photograph of Earthrise and having an understanding of like, oh, that's home.
Yes.
And
our first image of Earth, of the planet that we live on.
And the way I see photographs are very important because it helps me understand what to draw. It captures a moment of time, and how I see all this art and art all around us is that it's capturing an emotion, the soul, or something that gives us to ponder and pause and understand what that art is telling us. And it doesn't necessarily have to have a description. It has to give us a feeling. And it's wonderful. And Joe, thank you, Joe Stark. That's very sweet. So anybody else that would like to offer?
Yeah, I think Dr. AJ Kosari raised hand.
Yeah, yeah. Hi. Oh, thank you for a great. I'm actually in Washington D.C. watching you guys. This is really great. I have this the observation that I would like to say, which is that how art is very much part of space, and just that this Permian, Cambrian, Cretaceous, all these extinctions that took place on Earth over the last billion years or so, and then so many species were wiped out, but many of them came back, or new ones were formed. But we realized that none of them ever were thought about clothing themselves, and humans were the only ones that even clothed themselves, which means to me is not that we are superior, but that we have a special responsibility to all the life forms on Earth and maybe even the universe. And that responsibility cannot be handled only by rocket scientists and scientists only, but everybody on this Earth, scientists and authors and artists, everybody has to all work together to take that place. And that's why I think that art and other aspects of, I'm actually a rocket scientist, but I also paint. And actually some of my paintings are going to be exhibited next month in New York Art Expo. What is important is that we all, scientists and artists and authors and poets and everybody, needs to take this next step forward, which is the third dimension, which is the space, and the third dimension of the evolution next. And so I think I'm very, very, very glad and very hopeful and very thankful that we all are working together, ladies and men, everybody, and hopefully other life forms, that we are all working together on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. It is very important to collaborate and understand and work together. I want to share what Ken is offering in front of us. A lot of people don't know this, that high school members, 6th grade and up, worldwide, 6th grade and up, before college, of course, 6th to 12th grade, kids can join AIAA.org for free. For free. This gives them that little edge to say, oh my gosh, these are the rocket scientists. Yes, these are the real rocket scientists. They are trying to figure it out. And there's a lot of information available for kids to learn about aerospace. They can join for free. So it's AIAA.org. And then also educators. Those are the teachers. They all can join AIAA for free. So if you're a teacher at a school, homeschool, it is wonderful. There's a lot of tools that they can pull down from their membership and teach a workshop. It is a great opportunity for them. Professionally, I've belonged since 2008. I found my home with them, and I found my home with IAAA when I met Robert McCall, and he was exhibiting his artwork at Edwards Air Force Base. And they said, you live in Tucson? Do you know Kim Poor? I'm like, no, they introduced me to Kim Poor. I joined. So for me, this blends my engineering and art, and I use my art to help my engineering as well as my engineering helps my art. But this organization is amazing, and I I just wanted to share that with the educator associates that they can join for free. And if you're a student, college student, it's, I think, Ken, is it $25 when they're in college per year? Could be. So it offers them opportunity to still network. It's 30,000 members worldwide. It's a great way to network and understand what other organizations are doing. We have exhibited IAAA work with AIAA, so say that 20 times fast. So we've integrated an exhibit. We were trying to do it again with Ascend, but it happened twice in a row that it was virtual, and it's exhausting. This is the first virtual all women's event. It's different if your expectation is to go face to face and then say, no, it's virtual. That's entirely different feeling. This was designed to be virtual, to connect everybody nationwide. It's a lot of money to fly, and we don't want to do that right now. But this platform gives us a voice, and the voice is on March, National Women's History Month, and we're marking history. And I really am so grateful for everybody to come together, to hear everybody, hear their stories, their inspiration, and the troubles that they have faced creating the art. And sometimes you have to make it again. There's mistakes. And that's called lessons learned. So anybody else with last words?
I think Robert, yeah.
Oh, I just, I didn't get to, but I just, for comparison, from 35 years ago when I joined IAAA, I found out about IAAA through a PBS special with some of the founding members. And at that time, I thought I was like alone in the universe doing all this space art, because in college, I was not, let's say I was a unique character, and I more likely, I kind of hung with the astronomy department rather than the art department, because people thought what I was doing was so strange. But when I finally saw that show, I cried, because I said, my God, there's other people in this world who feel and do the things that I do for a reason. And it took a little bit of, we had no internet in those days, and it took a little bit of finagling to contact one of the members, who I think was Joel Hagen, and it was kind of onward for me. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to that.
So cool. Anybody else? This 2 hours went too fast.
I think Shahira.
I just want to say thank you so much. And this is I can't wait to tell people of my country, Malaysia, that I'm participating in this. My art is featured among the other amazing lady space artists. And I'm actually holding this huge responsibility as the IAAA member, the only IAAA member in Malaysia, and also the first space artist who actively educate the public about astronomy and arts. And this is huge, and I want them to be proud of how far will Malaysia goes in this field.
And I want to give a hug to everybody for coming and joining us. And I really appreciate it. Yes, Patty.
Yes, Michelle, again, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everybody who made this happen. It's really important. And I see that now after listening to everybody. And I just want to go paint now. Thank you. Inspired me.
Anybody else? Wonderful, wonderful. And I can't thank you enough. I can't thank AIAA again to carry the entire session. This is wonderful. I look forward to next time of another event somewhere else, some other time, and keep moving and keep growing and keep painting. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. Take care now.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you, AIAA and IAAA.
Bye-bye.
Yay, woo! Space Art Sisters, go!
Let's go.
Amen.
Thanks again,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
I don't know how to get off of here. Oh, mute.
Thank you, Lou, for all that you've done. This is a wonderful opportunity for